When you're sick or you have an illness, it will impact your blood sugar in many different ways.
Which is why it's important that there are a lot of safeguards and planning that goes into being prepared.
When I was recently diagnosed, I would always give my provider a call, or my parents would, and be like, okay, we have this, these are the symptoms, what should we be doing to prepare, what are some things that we can do to help with diabetes management, because that's what they're there for. They want to help you.
If you are on an insulin pump, there are so many ways that you can kind of make that smart pump work for you preemptively before you're even sick, right? So some pumps have profiles, and you can set different profiles to different parts of your life, right?
I have a period profile and a sick day profile, and then I just have like my main basal for all the other times.
You know, your needs are going to be higher, so your insulin to carb ratio is probably going to be higher, your correction factor is going to be higher, and you can have that as a safeguard.
If you're on the tandem pump, that's great. You can go and switch over to your other profile. But a really popular system that a lot of people are on right now is the Omnipod 5. And with the Omnipod 5, you can't go to a different profile and still have automated mode in the background.
Even for people with multiple daily injections, you can still create a sick day profile. It's just going to be, manual injections, and you'll have that printout. Similarly, you can play with your alarms on your continuous glucose monitor to alert you when your blood sugar is maybe only 200 instead of 300 or 250.
When you're not feeling well, yes, we do want to check our blood sugar more frequently.
So on an insulin pump, you definitely want to be checking blood sugars and ketones about every 2 hours, while on manual daily injections, you can stretch that out to every 3 hours.
When you're sick, right, you have, extra stress hormones, your body's mounting this big response, you might be getting rid of extra fluids, right? You might be vomiting, you might be having diarrhea, right? So your body is very susceptible to dehydration, and dehydration can definitely be a contributor to DKA, or diabetic ketoacidosis. So making sure we have plenty of water, having bottled water around is always great. And then I also like having snacks around, like non-perishable snacks that you can kind of just throw in a cabinet somewhere. Things like crackers or applesauce.
Whatever sounds appeasing to you and whatever you can get into your system and keep down.
Some kind of like sports drink typically is a great option to do the trick. Pedialyte is another great option.
A lot of times with diabetes, we resort right to the zero sugar ones, but when we're sick, if we're not eating enough carbs through our basic nutrition, having drinks that have sugar in them is going to be really important to be sipping on throughout the day to make sure we don't have those lows, or we don't, have a DKA episode.
We always want to check. Always check for ketones, preferably blood ketones. They're much easier to interpret. If you do have ketones, you're going to make sure that you're taking in fluids. It tells us that we need more insulin. Usually what you'd want to do, even if you're on an insulin pump, is give an injection.
If you are starting to see that your blood sugars are trending higher and you're not really sick, or you don't think you're sick, but you're trying to get a grip of it, that would be a great call or even a MyChart message to your provider to do a blood sugar review and try to see if they can help you handle that.
If you cannot get ketones down, that's where people with diabetes would need to head to the emergency department. And I always like to make it really clear to people that if you have to go to the emergency department, it's not a failure on your end. You're doing a good thing. You're keeping yourself safe.
If you just want to get a general run through of, okay, I want to make sure this isn't anything super serious, that's where maybe going to an urgent care, early on in your sick day would be okay.
Always make sure that you're speaking up for yourself and your concerns.
I personally had an experience where I went to the emergency room and they had no idea what they were doing. So this is a very common situation where they don't know.
The biggest advice that I can give is to advocate for yourself and to not feel like you can't, right?
A lot of hospitals now will have some sort of diabetes specialist. They will get called on immediately in a situation of DKA, or someone with type 1 coming into the hospital. But asking for that person and trying to get to that person first can be really helpful for you as a patient.
It's okay to seek out provider help and emergency services help, and it's better to do that actually when maybe it's a lower threshold and maybe you didn't necessarily need them right then than waiting until it's too late.
Diabetes community is absolutely incredible. We just want to help as much as we possibly can. So if you're sick, reaching out to the community and asking them like, well, have you ever taken this medication?
So I'm actually on the Diabetes Link Discord channel where you can talk about anything. There's like a channel for foodies, insurance, gaming, sports. But there's also a channel for being sick, and I just throw in questions there like, hey, is anyone else sick this week?
Even now that I'm in college, I'm living in a suite with 3 of my other friends. They are really, really supportive and really helpful with my diabetes. So that definitely helps, knowing that even if I am sick, there are a lot of people who are like very willing to help.
It is definitely exhausting and overwhelming. So
Really prioritize your mental health while you're being sick, because your body is physically stressed out, but you're also putting a lot of pressure on yourself, which is then also stressing you out. And then that is kind of just a combination of elevated blood sugars for everyone. So just being patient and showing yourself grace is really important.
As you experience more sick days as a diabetic, like it gets easier each time and you'll get into more of a routine with it. But in general, even outside of sick day preparedness, like managing your diabetes is something that will not always be so scary.